Close your eyes. Picture a caveman. What do you see? A brutish figure, hunched and hairy, clutching a wooden club, a simple mind staring blankly into the fire. This image is one of our most persistent myths. It's a caricature we created to make ourselves feel special, advanced, superior. But the universe doesn't care about our ego. The cosmos reveals truths based on evidence, not stories we tell ourselves. The evidence about our closest extinct relatives, the Neanderthals, paints a different picture. They were not the dim-witted brutes of our cartoons. They were successful, intelligent, resilient, a branch of the human family tree that thrived for hundreds of thousands of years. To understand the Neanderthals is to hold up a cosmic mirror to ourselves. We are Homo sapiens, the wise humans. They were Homo neanderthalensis. For a time we shared this planet, walked the same landscapes, looked up at the same stars, felt the same sun on our skin. Imagine a world locked in the grip of a relentless ice age. Glaciers miles high carve up the landscape. The wind howls with a cold that seeps into your very bones. This was the world the Neanderthals mastered, and their bodies were the key to their success. They were, in a word, powerhouses. Shorter and stockier than most modern humans, their build was a perfect adaptation for conserving heat. Think of it like physics. A sphere has less surface area. A tall, thin cylinder of the same volume has more surface area, which means it loses heat more quickly. The Neanderthal body plan was a living example of that principle. Their bones tell a story of immense strength. Neanderthal arm bones, compared side by side, to the arms of an elite weightlifter. Their grip strength would have been crushing, essential for wielding heavy spears, and for processing animal carcasses without modern tools. Their powerful legs were built for rugged, mountainous terrain, not for long-distance running like early Homo sapiens. Instead built for powerful bursts of energy and stability, the ultimate all-terrain vehicles of the Paleolithic world, built for endurance and raw power. Look closer at their heads. The skull was long and low, not tall and rounded like ours. It housed a brain slightly larger on average than modern humans. Brain size isn't everything. Shape and organization matter. Their large brains likely supported different cognitive functions. Faces dominated by a large, projecting nose and a heavy brow ridge. That prominent nose may have warmed and humidified frigid, dry air, a critical cold weather adaptation. They were exceptionally tough. Fossils reveal healed fractures, injuries comparable to modern rodeo riders, evidence of confronting enormous prey and unforgiving environments. They weren't primitive, they were perfected for their time and place. For too long, the symbol of Neanderthal intelligence was the club, a simple tool for a simple mind. But this does a grave injustice to their ingenuity. The reality is that Neanderthals were sophisticated toolmakers. Their signature technology is known as the Mousterian tool industry, far more complex than simply banging rocks. It involved a technique called Levallois, which requires careful planning and foresight. Levallois, prepare a core Levallois, shape the core precisely. Levallois, strike off a finished flake with one decisive blow. Close-up of the finished flake. This is not brute force, this is cognitive skill. This ability to think in steps, to visualize a finished product within a raw block of stone, reveals a mind capable of abstract thought and complex problem-solving. They weren't just making one type of tool, they created a whole toolkit. Spear points for hunting, scrapers for preparing animal hides, knives for butchering meat, awls for punching holes in leather. They selected specific types of stone for their properties and sometimes traveled long distances to find the best materials. This demonstrates planning, resource management, a deep understanding of their environment. Beyond tools, there's growing evidence of complex social structures and communication. To coordinate hunts for massive prey like mammoths and woolly rhinos required teamwork and a way to communicate complex ideas. The anatomy of their hyoid bone is virtually identical to our own, suggesting they possessed the physical capacity for speech. Their brains, particularly regions associated with language in modern humans, were well developed. They likely communicated, planned, and shared knowledge across generations. Numerous skeletons show individuals surviving years with debilitating injuries. The old man of La Chapelle-aux-Saints lived despite severe injuries, so he must have been cared for by his group. Step into a Neanderthal camp from 50,000 years ago. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and roasting meat over an open fire. This is not a dark, damp cave, a rock shelter or an open-air site chosen for its strategic view. The central feature is the hearth, the heart of their world. Recent discoveries show Neanderthals were masters of fire. They didn't just use it when they found it, they could create fire. They could control fire. They could create fire. They could control fire for warmth, cooking, and keeping predators at bay. Hearths were used for warmth and cooking. Hearths were social gathering points. Here, stories might have been shared. Tools were made here, and bonds of the group were strengthened. Their lives were organized around small, close-knit family groups, maybe 15 to 30 people. These were not aimless wanderers, but people tied to their territory. They likely moved seasonally, following the herds. They knew where to find plants, flint, and shelter, knowledge passed down generations. Their homes were ordered spaces with distinct butchering, tool-making, and sleeping areas. Archaeology shows distinct flint-knapping stations and butchery areas. What did they eat? They were apex predators, hunting large game, mammoths, bison, wild horses. But chemical analysis of teeth reveals a much broader menu. They ate plants, nuts, seeds, mussels, seals, fish. They even cooked plant foods to make them more digestible. That dietary flexibility helped them survive changing climates for hundreds of thousands of years. Hides became clothing and shelter. Bones and ivory became tools or fuel. Nothing was wasted. This shows foresight and resource management. The social fabric was complex. They cared for the sick and the elderly. There is evidence of intentional burial, Shanidar, Lafarasi. Bodies placed flexed, suggesting loss, respect, and perhaps belief. The act of burial suggests the stirrings of symbolic thought. They protected and supported each other. This is not the behavior of brutish animals. It is the behavior of communities with deep social bonds, empathy, and responsibility for one another. So when we think of a Neanderthal hunt, the image that probably comes to mind is one of chaotic, desperate violence. But honestly, the truth is far more strategic and, well, impressive. Neanderthals weren't just scavengers lurking in the shadows. They were apex predators. Their main targets were the megafauna of the Pleistocene: mammoths, woolly rhinos, giant deer, wild horses. Taking down prey like that is no simple task. It takes immense courage, physical strength, and a brilliant strategy. These hunts were highly coordinated group efforts requiring communication and deep knowledge of animal behavior. Their primary weapon was a short, heavy-duty thrusting spear tipped with a carefully made stone point. Not throwing spears, close-quarters thrusting meant they had to get dangerously close to enormous animals. Imagine confronting a multi-ton tank of muscle and horn with nothing but a wooden spear. The evidence is written in the bones. Mass accumulations, butchery marks, and impact fractures matching forceful spear thrusts. They used the landscape, narrow ravines, bogs, cliffs, to tip the odds in their favor. Hunters targeted vital organs to bring animals down quickly, showing intimate knowledge of anatomy. This knowledge was taught across generations, a science of the hunt. After the kill, processing a multi-ton carcass was fast, systematic, and efficient. They stripped meat, fat, and hide. Meat for food, fat for energy, hides for clothing and shelter. Bones and ivory became tools. Nothing was wasted, and this efficiency cemented their status as masters of their frozen realm. For a long time, art and symbolic thought were considered the exclusive domain of Homo sapiens. We were the poets and painters. Neanderthals were silent and unimaginative. But newly discovered artifacts are beginning to tell a different story. In caves across Spain dating back more than 65,000 years, long before Homo sapiens arrived, we find abstract art. Red ochre lines, dots, hand stencils. These are intentional marks, not accidental smudges. The act of creating them is profoundly significant. To make paint, they gathered pigments like ochre and charcoal, ground them into powder, and mixed them with a binder. This is a multi-step process requiring planning and a clear goal. This is the beginning of art. Archaeologists have found eagle talons that were deliberately cut and shaped, likely to be worn as pendants or bracelets. A site in Croatia yielded 8 talons showing wear and perforations, evidence of stringing into a necklace or bracelet. They collected unusual shells, drilled holes, used pigments like black manganese and red ochre, possibly for body decoration. This isn't just survival. It's identity, aesthetics, and expression. Polished artifacts show care and beauty. Body painting and ornaments express individuality or group affiliation. These discoveries are shattering old stereotypes. They show the capacity for symbolic thought and the creation of beauty and adornment. Art and adornment are not exclusively ours. These behaviors evolved deep in the human family tree. They looked at an eagle's talon and saw beauty and power. They looked at a blank cave wall and saw a canvas. They felt the need to decorate their bodies and express identity. These are the fundamental sparks of culture. They burned brightly in the minds of our ancient relatives long before we thought possible. For over 350,000 years, Neanderthals reigned across Europe and Asia. They weathered ice ages, hunted mammoths, and built a resilient culture. And then, in a geological blink of an eye, they vanished. Around 40,000 years ago, their trail goes cold. Their disappearance is one of prehistory's greatest mysteries. What happened? Where did they go? The prime suspect, of course, is us, Homo sapiens. The newcomers arrived from Africa around that time, but the story is complicated. One leading theory involves extreme climatic instability, rapid shifts that altered landscapes and dwindled large game populations. Small scattered groups struggled to find food and maintain social ties. Homo sapiens were a different kind of human, built for long-distance running and armed with projectile technologies that changed hunting dynamics. We lived in larger social groups, buffered hard times, and sped cultural innovation. Not necessarily violent war, but slow-out competition over millennia. Perhaps they didn't disappear completely. They were absorbed. Genetics shows interbreeding. If your ancestry is from outside Africa, you carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA. As Neanderthals dwindled from climate and competition, remaining individuals were gradually assimilated. Their genetic and cultural legacy blended into ours. The story of the Neanderthals doesn't end 40,000 years ago with the last of their bones. It continues today, written in the very fabric of our being. The ghost of the Neanderthal lives within most of us. Thanks to sequencing the Neanderthal genome, we can compare their DNA with ours. The result is stunning. Modern humans outside sub-Saharan Africa carry on average between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA. This is the undeniable genetic footprint of ancient encounters. This inheritance is not junk. Many retained genes are related to the immune system. When Homo sapiens left Africa, they met new pathogens. Neanderthals had genetic resistance to local bugs. By interbreeding, we got a genetic booster shot that helped survival in these lands. Other Neanderthal genes influence skin, hair, and nails, pigmentation adaptations for higher latitudes. These traits likely helped our ancestors adapt to different UV environments outside Africa. However, not all inherited DNA is beneficial today. Some variants link to slightly higher risks of type 2 diabetes, depression, and autoimmune diseases. Genes helpful in the Paleolithic can have different effects in our modern environment. It's a reminder that evolution works in the present, not for the future. The Neanderthal legacy within us is complex, a mix of ancient strengths and modern vulnerabilities, a ghostly echo of a world long gone. So, let's perform one final thought experiment. Imagine you could travel back in time or bring a Neanderthal to our present day. What would you see if you met one on the street? Forget the hunched posture and the vacant stare. You would see a person, shorter, incredibly muscular, with a distinctive face, but undeniably human. You would see intelligent eyes taking in a world beyond their wildest comprehension. The greatest myth broken would be the myth of the other, that they were fundamentally different in some unbridgeable way. If you could speak with them, what would you learn? You would learn about giant beasts, biting cold, the feel of flint in your hand, the smell of mammoth on the fire. You would learn about family, loyalty, caring for the weak, honoring the dead. You would see a mind perhaps more visually and spatially oriented, but no less capable of wonder, love, loss, fear, joy. The things that connect us as humans run deeper than the shape of our skulls. The story of the Neanderthals teaches us humility. We were not the sole inheritors of this planet. For a long time we shared this world with other intelligent, resourceful people. Climate change, competition, assimilation, even a long successful species can vanish under rapid change. So the next time you hear Neanderthal as an insult, stop and think. Think of the artists who painted in the dark, the hunters who faced rhinos, the families who cared for elders. They are not a punchline, they are a vital chapter in the human story. They are our cousins, our ancestors, and a part of us. They deserve our respect, our curiosity, and our awe. To understand them is to better understand the cosmic journey of what it means to be human.